New Hampshire border south to Gentian Pond campsite. It was so exciting to see the sign, "Welcome to Maine, the way life should be." I have seen this picture in so many Appalachian Trail hiking books that I had read over the years. Now I was finally here, and we were now in New Hampshire. This will be our third border crossing on the AT. We did not know where the climb up to Mount Success began, as there was once again a lot of PUDs. I had kept saying, "This must be Mount Success," at each steep climb, and Dave would keep saying, "No, it is not." And then we would descend again, and this would keep going on for miles. We were all mixed up as to where the top of Mount Success actually started. We finally reached the rope, and it went down the small slanted rock. It was not really as bad as they had made it out to be. It did not even compare to what we had already done yesterday over Goose Eye or North, East, and West Peaks. Today was hard, but it was not as hard as yesterday or the Notch. We reached the top of Mount Success, and the views up here were superb. We could even see Mount Washington. It was a beautiful day with sunny skies and with the temperatures in the 70s, with a nice cool breeze on the top. We were in a nice alpine area with some bogs on the top. A hiker had written in a shelter register that he was walking across the bog when he had slipped off of it and into the mud here. He said that his leg had sank up to his knees. We found one of the sections of the boardwalk where one side of the board had sunk down into the mud and was slanted. Dave pushed his hiking pole into the mud. It sank into the mud, and when he pulled it out, the mud was up to his knees. There was another board that was across from this board, and we crossed over to it with no problems. We reached a rock with steps in it that went down the other side of Mount Success. We were supposed to go over two small humps, but we could not tell where these humps were, as there was too many PUDs for us to figure out how many there was. It was definitely more than two. We went into a brushy area, and then we descended from the alpine area and into a more hardwood area. We found some more raspberries here, and they tasted great. The trail came into a more grown-in area with lots of calico asters and goldenrods. This is the only section of this trail that we had seen so much brush on the trail. It was strange to see this in a mountain area. We went down to Gentian Pond Campground, which was right off the trail. We had arrived very early and had pics of the tent platforms, so we were able to find the best spot, although all the sites were fairly close. The water source was a long way down the hill from the sites. It was the inlet to Gentian Pond. After filtering our water, we went to the pond, and we saw no wildlife around the pond. Here we were, in New Hampshire, at a fabulous backwoods pond, and no moose. Dave kept saying, "Where's the moose?" But there was no moose here. The shelter was a nice log-style lean-to with a great view of the distant mountains from inside the lean-to. We had seen a woodpecker flying around the lean-to, and later, as we were laying down inside our tent, we could hear it pecking away at a tree near our tent. We were listening to my weather radio, and they were forecasting for a chance of rain for the next 3 days here. We had had wonderful weather for the last 4 days, and we were hoping for no rain for the rest of the trip. Dave had put up the tarp over the tent, more to the front where the opening was, just in case it rained during the night and into the morning, so we would have a dry place to make our breakfast. Today we had heard the red squirrel, some crows, and the woodpecker. For the first time this trip we heard road traffic, maybe Route 2? It had been so nice and quiet in the woods for 4 days that you can really notice the noise of the traffic nearby. We also heard a train in the distance. As we were settled in for the night, a thru-hiker arrived and was complaining loudly to other thru-hikers about how much he hated section hikers taking up space that should only be for thru-hikers. A lot of thru-hikers had arrived here, and they all knew each other. I was feeling like an unwanted outsider here. I think that thru-hikers treat section hikers unfairly. They can hike the AT in one trip, and they can take off from work, or not have to go to work, or have the chance to do the trail after college before they start to work. For people that section hike the trail, they do not have time to take off from work and can only do the trail when they have the time to do it. We all want to complete the Appalachian Trail, and everyone who hikes the trail should be treated the same, no matter how they do it. During the night as I was sleeping, I had a dream that a bear was outside our tent moving around where our packs were. Anyways, I hope that it was just a dream. August 23rd, Gentian Pond Campsite, south to Trident Coal Campground. In the morning, a red squirrel had woke me up, followed by a crow, and then the sound of a train in the distance. It was cloudy and damp out, but thankfully it had not started to rain yet. The air had become very humid. We ate our breakfast and broke down and then headed back to the trail. We started the trail with a climb. It had been so nice and cool the last 4 days. Now the humidity has returned and we could feel it. Today was more flat, though there was a lot of muddy areas and swamps. We saw some kind of asters here that were not calico asters. They had purple flowers. We had seen a lot of moose poop on the trail, but no moose at the pond. There was no wind today, so it made the air heavier with the humidity. We went through some nice tall pine trees and some small pine trees that made it look like a Christmas tree forest. We reached Wocket Ledges and had a nice view of Mount Washington again. However, today it was in the clouds. We tried to look around at the mountains to figure what the trail went over for tomorrow's hike. We were facing in the direction where we had left the car. The last 2 mountains looked hard on the AT map for tomorrow. We met a hiker who had just started out to do the main section of the trail and had planned to finish it at the top of Mount Katahdin. We passed a lot of ponds on this section. The last pond was Page Pond, and before that was Moss Pond, and then Gentian Pond, where we were last night. The sun had come back out for a while after we came down from the ledges, and we went into a hardwood forest. It looked similar to the Vermont woods, lots of ferns, hardwood, and brush. We climbed up again over a hill where we could see the rock ledges in the distance that we had gone over this morning. It was a very pretty area, and there was some goldenrods here. Then the trail climbed up more, and we reached a trail junction where we met 3 thru-hikers eating their lunch. This trail went to the Trident Coal Campground. The site was about 0.2 miles off the trail. This campsite had no tent platforms, however the sites were nicely spread apart. There was about 6 sites here. There were lots of corvine here, and we heard lots of crows too. There was a cliff here above us, so they must be nesting in them. One of the crows had a very funny, strange call. Dave said that it sounded like a sick crow with a sore throat. We were in early again, around 2:30, and Dave said that he wanted to stay the night here because the next campsite would be too far for us to reach it before dark. I was afraid that it might rain tomorrow, and it had ledges that were going to be slippery if it rained. We were debating if we should go on. The woods around here was thick and slanted, and Dave did not think that we would find a spot to stealth camp. We would also have to carry full water bottles from here, as there may not be any water to filter from again. Well, we decided to stay. So far, no one else has shown up here yet, and it was almost 5 o'clock now. We set up camp and played hangman game with a food theme. I was getting very hungry at this point. All I could think of was food that I have not had eaten since I was a kid, like pizza with lots of tomato sauce. We went to the bear box and found that some hikers had left a lot of trash inside it. The composting privy was out of bark, and Dave went out into the wood with the empty bag and collect some more bark for the privy. We have not seen any caretakers for these sites since the first night. We had seen a red squirrel and had found some woodpecker feathers. We had heard crows and the wind in the trees. August 24th, Trident Coal Campground, south to Gorham, New Hampshire. We woke up to rain, and the raining had started sometime during the night. A heat wave had moved in, and this morning the air was dead and oppressively humid. We heard some crows, some peepers, and some crickets when the rain started. The rain had dumped water inside the tent in the morning when we opened the tent flaps. Everything outside was wet and muddy. It was a good thing that we were heading out today. We had about 6 hard miles to go, and we were dripping wet from not just the rain, but also from the sweat in our rain gear. We were also roasting inside the rain gear with the very humid air as we were climbing the many PUDs up to Mount Cascade. We thought that we would never get up and down this mountain, as it felt like that we were just dragging constantly going up and down. The problem was the heat and the humidity. It was the first time that we had this kind of weather during this trip. And also, there was no views, so we were just trudging through the rain with our heads down, only seeing the ground in front of us. The woods was in a fog, and when we reached the top of Mount Hayes, well, let's just say that it was the right name for the mountain today. It was clouded in with a haze over it, and it was just as hot and humid as it was from the bottom of the climb. We stopped here to eat our lunch, and now we were not just out of food, but we found out that we were also out of toilet paper. After lunch, we just hummed it down the mountain on the last 3 miles out to the car. Dave had fell 3 times on the wet rocks because his boots were covered in mud. I was in the lead, and I saw the car first. Dave was further behind me and was in denial. He said that we were nowhere near the car yet. I saw the opening in the woods and spotted the red taillights of our car. We were so happy to reach the car. The first thing I did when we got into the car was to rip open a bag of chips that we had in the car. I had never been so hungry. All I could think of last night was food. It was a wet hike out, and it was nice to be out of the rain. We saw no wildlife on the trail today, but we did hear the heat crickets, a red squirrel, and some crows today, the only wildlife out on this wet day.